Hello, everyone. Welcome to this exciting episode of People Who Inspire. So today, I'm really excited to bring your way a very special guest, as all my guests are special, of course. And we have Frank Ribeiro, who is going to share his personal journey within the tech space. And also, we are going to dovetail into the topic of how to build the tech talent in Africa. I mean, Africa, as we all know, is a continent with the youngest population, with about 1.2 billion people. And, we have the average age, being less than 20 years. It means that where tech is exploding and the talent within the youth is explored, if we can find a conversion between these two parallels, then obviously we have a bright future as a continent. So, Frank, I'm happy to have you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well and very excited to be here.
Awesome. I mean, I saw on social media a lot of people expressing interest in today's session, and I think that we can all learn from your journey, and we can also more or less pick your brain on salient topics regarding building the tech talent on the continent. And I'm sure that for those of you watching, you would glean a lesson or two, and we can build an ecosystem of people who believe in the continent. So I always try to start the conversation trying to know my guests and what their journeys have been. And I'm also quite curious to get to know a bit more about who Frank is. And I'm sure my audience are also wondering who really is Frank Ribeiro and what has his journey been. So can you walk us through both your professional and personal journey from, Ghana up until now? Where were you born? What is it like growing up in the family that you grew up in? And share that journey with us. And try to answer the question, who really is Frank?
Thank you very much. So, I was born in Accra, Ghana, to in actually a large family. I have 6 siblings, so I have 4 brothers and 2 sisters. And growing up, my elder brother, so we have about 15 years age gap, was very, curious. He was always, fidgeting with electronic gadgets. He was doing science in secondary school, so he would come and perform like some of these science experiments at home. So I really got curious about electronics at a very young age, and he went on to pursue electrical engineering in the University of Science and Technology at the time. So for me, watching him work, like after graduation, do like work with computers, and sometimes you build circuits. He had this oscilloscope, and seeing all these signals move on the screen was really exciting. So at a very young age, I wanted to pursue the same track as he did. So I went through senior high school, studied science, went to the Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, and then proceeded to the 𝗂𝗏 University of Science and Technology, where I studied electrical engineering as well. I mean, just following what my brother was doing.
Your brother, yeah.
Was really exciting. Electrical engineering is broad, so I was introduced to the different aspects, power systems, communications, control systems. And for me, my passion was to go into computers and telecommunications, so I was more focused in those areas. And I remember at the time, we had very limited, very slow speed internet at the time, like edge speeds. You battle with and edge speeds, and go. But the good thing at the time was, during vacations, I was fortunate. I had an internship in internet service provider company, so I was able to kind of use the internet, downloaded a few tutorials, website web development, and some Java programming that I'll kind of do during the holidays, and then come back to school and then continue the curriculum. So my journey in electrical engineering was that. When I graduated in 2010, in Ghana, after graduation, we have to do a 1-year national service.
Yes, national.
a friend of mine, actually a senior course mate who was working in Huawei at the time, told me about the company, and I didn't really know much about Huawei. All I knew was that Huawei was a phone company. They manufactured mobile phones, but I didn't know they were telecommunication infrastructure. So he told me about it, and I was excited. I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I want to do. I like working with wireless stuff, and at home I used to set up a Wi-Fi and then network the TVs and all that. So I was excited about it, and then applied to Huawei, and then started my career in Huawei. Now Huawei was a whole different ball game, a very, very rigorous environment, very, very fast paced. I remember my first day on the job, I was told to just get my bags ready because the next day I was traveling to the Volta region of Ghana to go swap.
Wow.
Sites. And I was wondering, like, I just came to
first day.
You have to go and swap your cell site. So I got ready. I remember the next day, and that was, I think, the only time I had only traveled to the Ashanti region and Greater Accra, where I was born. So it was an interesting time. Went to the Volta region. Only to find out that even the swap of the site had to be done at midnight, right? So,
okay.
A huge, massive immersion
into the work,
into the work. And, we have to stay awake throughout the night to swap the cell site. And we had to move from Flower at the border. That was one site, and I think which was another area. And myself and a colleague of mine who were doing this at the time, we were all new to the job. And I can remember when we swapped the sites, no one could make phone calls in the whole area because I literally swapped something, the transmission. So it was really exciting.
That's like a massive impact of that work.
Yeah. But yeah, we were able to do it. And my manager said, oh yeah, you guys are professionals, you are experts, so continue. So my first day when I left Accra, I continued through all the regions in the northern part of Ghana, went to the western region for 4 months, just swapping cell sites. And for me, it was a very good experience because I was getting to getting practical experience of all the theory that I had learned in school. So came back down, and I think it was a very unique time in Huawei because that was a time where they were really growing in the Ghanaian market.
Yes.
They had about, when I was joining, they had about 20% market share of the radio network of the largest telecom provider, that's MTN. And when I was leaving in just 2 years, we had basically about almost 80% of the market share. So that was a huge period of a lot of projects, and myself was I was part of the team that was literally driving this. I think by the time I was leaving, I configured about almost 3,000 cell sites across the country. So that was a very huge experience for me. After that, after 2 years, I moved to 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃, which was later acquired by Nokia, where I was going to work on a 4G network, which was the first in Ghana at the time, but it was for the government, and then also the government data center. And that was new, very exciting time as well. And that was when I got the interest in IP networking, because my role was kind of hybrid. I was supposed to be working on the radio side as well as the core network side. And what was happening at the time was that there was a shift in telecommunication architecture. Everything was moving from the conventional old architecture into an all IP architecture. So I was curious and I'm very excited to acquire this new skill, which was very important for telecommunications. So to develop that skill, there's a certification tracked by Cisco, which was very comprehensive, and it was like the industry standard for networking. So I decided to pursue that track, and I started learning. Took the initial stages of the exam. On my own, I was kind of self-learning. Also, at the same time, using the internet to get all the learning materials, and also joining groups, study groups, to kind of explain some of the concepts that were missing. And I was applying that on the job as well. So after 2 years, I moved from 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃 and then Nokia. the time, and then moved to the Ghana Great Company. So I was still continuing my certification track at the time.
Okay, whilst you're working.
Yeah, whilst I was working.
Okay.
So in the Ghana Great Company, that's like the power utility. It was a very interesting project. At the time, they were looking at commercializing their telecommunication assets. So I was part of the team that was, supposed to come up with a roadmap and a strategy on how they were going to commercialize this infrastructure. And being an engineer, I was supposed to bring the technical, point of view to the team to come up with that business plan. Whilst I was in grade school, I was still continuing the certification because I was passionate about it, even though I wasn't really doing the IP networking, but I was really focused on pursuing the certification. So I think after 2 years, I managed to pass the expert level certification.
Okay.
Now at the time, there were about just 6 people in Ghana who had it, and even getting support, to learn the problem. But the internet again was my go-to, and I had spoken to some of the people who had written the certification, and they had told me about their journeys. Some of them went for boot camps outside as in their learning journey. But for me, I kind of used the internet. I reached out to people on LinkedIn who had those certifications, and I asked them like, hey, I'm in Ghana and I want to pursue this certification. Can you help me with the journey? Can you share your story with me? Mm-hmm. And a few of them did. Got to know the books I needed to read, how to even set up a lab to practice the theory that I was learning, and some of them even gave me access to their labs.
Oh wow! So these were people you did not know before.
Yeah, these were people I didn't know. I just reached out to them on LinkedIn. So that was really an eye opener, like seeing the power of networking on LinkedIn on the internet. And once I was able to pass the certification, I was asking myself what next, because I learned a lot, and I wanted to work at the scale of networks that I worked I saw in the program. So I started looking at these companies that basically make the internet take, these large companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, how do I get to work on these large networks? Same thing, went back on LinkedIn, did some research, found a few people who came from Africa, similar backgrounds, who were working in these companies, or some of them had moved on and were in different companies, and then asked them, what can I do if I want to do work in these companies? And they gave me some guidelines. There was no magic to it. They said just make sure that you learn and know your technologies work very well. And at the time, I had just finished my exam, so I just kept on learning. And I remember at the time, I used to have interviews with other smaller companies just to identify knowledge gaps that I had, not to actually move or join them. So I would apply for roles, some of them above me.
Okay. So you just applied. You're working and you applied for these roles to understand the knowledge gap between the industry and what you are studying, like those gaps. That's what, and you're doing that on purpose.
Yeah, I was doing that on purpose, and it was really interesting. I remember, I thought, oh yeah, I knew almost everything, in networking, and then some of the interviews were really went really bad. I remember there was one that I was just totally down. I started even laughing on the interview, and the panelists were wondering what's wrong with this guy. I thought I really knew everything in this domain, but I was very wrong. So yeah, I kept on doing that, and then I applied on LinkedIn. I saw the roles opened, and I applied to Amazon and Facebook at the time, and I got an email from the recruiters that they wanted to have an interview with me. I actually missed those emails because I didn't even think it was going to be. Sometimes you feel like you're far away from these things, like the opportunity, but the people I connected with maybe believed that it was possible, but I still doubted. Right?
Exactly.
So those emails, I kind of came back later and I'm like, maybe this is a scam.
Too good to be true.
Yeah, I checked the domain. It was Amazon.com, Facebook.com at the time, and then I started the interview process. which again, like I said, my connections on LinkedIn, and basically were like, just learn your stuff, make sure you know. And then the unique thing here was about learning about the company culture, which for me at the time was not something that I was used to. Like most of the things you just learn about, like the values of the company. You pass the technical interview literally and you get it, but this was like it was wired in the fabric of the company. So I needed to. I remember reading about, a whole book about Jeff Bezos at the time, just to understand the Amazon culture. Went through the interview and then I landed the role in Amazon. So moving to Amazon was a new chapter for me. Looking at the scale of Amazon, it was just, I was blown away by the size of the network. It was like kind of like, be careful what you wish for. I almost, I think at a point I almost even ran away. I'm like, yeah, this is not because what was happening? I needed to rewire, learn and relearn.
Like the scale of the operations alone.
Yes, exactly. So I stayed in Amazon and it was a very interesting time. I learned a lot about operating at scale, high performing teams, what makes teams do these kind of things. And I think after about 3 years in Amazon, I was evaluating and thinking of what next in my career. I was thinking of going to business school because I think I had a plan that after 10 years of working, I want to go into do business to business school and then build myself in technical management and stuff like that. So I started applying for business school, and then I saw this interesting role online on Netflix, and it was based in Amsterdam, which was fascinating to me because I was planning on, if I wanted to go to business school, maybe I should move to Amsterdam because it was something I thought about. So I applied to the role, went through the interview. It was a hybrid role of project management and engineering, and that was a network provisioning administrator for EMEA at the time. And then I got into the role, stayed there for about a year, and then my curiosity just drove me back into network engineering. There was a role open, and then I was like, I want to really know how this thing takes again. And then I went for that role, and that's the current team that I'm in, where we basically ensure that the Netflix service is accessible to to users optimally around the globe. I think that's a short summary.
That's really amazing, and thanks for sharing that. I wanted to ask, so I realized that in your story, your brother was kind of pivotal somehow in inspiring you into this engineering pathway. So like, did you have any kind of role models or like people you looked up to growing up? I'm sure your brother probably was one of them. And how important was, let's say, that role model to your journey so far?
I think growing up, it was something just with my brother. I kind of we naturally look up to our elder siblings, right? So my younger brother, the one after me, also studied electrical engineering. So you can imagine, like, it was something that we just were wired.
And I'm sure he also went to PeopleWhoInspire, followed your footsteps.
Exactly, he did the same. Went to the same high school, went to the same university. So we just followed that. I really didn't have any role model outside that. Just my elder brother. And what he had done was just give me that inspiration to pursue the same track.
That makes perfect sense. And you kind of, in your journey, I see let's say common theme of curiosity and that self-driven passion. So you mentioned quite a number of times, out of curiosity you decided to do this and that. And how important is that, curious mind, and how did that kind of influence you? Because I know you studied electrical engineering, and I'm not sure how connected that is with network engineering, but I'm sure some curiosity came about at some point and you're like, okay, let me try this out. So like, just want to understand how the curious mind that you have kind of contributed to your path.
Yeah, I think in the tech world, like it's a very fast-paced, fast-changing environment, right? So or field, so you can't be stuck with what you know, right? There's always something new. So for me, I did computer networking for a semester in university, so I was introduced to the topic. At the time, I wasn't really, you know, it wasn't like that's what I wanted to do. I was just interested in communications and ICT, so networking was part of it. But as a
Yeah.
whole, it wasn't like I decided that I was going to do networking at the point. I just wanted to do something that was in telecommunications. So the curiosity is very important because, like I said, you can see that the technology was evolving, the field, the scene was changing, and I think my curiosity just keeps helping me to adapt to the changing
Yeah.
scenes of this tech space.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the world is evolving at a fast pace such that if you don't have that curious mind and that adaptability, you would phase out. And a lot of people watching this, are either within the tech space or, are trying to get into the tech space. Now, the transition from Ghana into Amazon, I surmise that this was like a huge transition for you. How was the experience like? Did you feel any form of kind of an imposter syndrome when you went to Amazon, or did you feel, because I know the scale of the let's say the Amazon operations is huge, and kind of coming from Gridco into Amazon, it's my view quite like a 360-degree turn or impact in scale. So can you maybe share with us like what your first few days at Amazon was, and how did you overcome, the kind of maybe an imposter syndrome at the beginning, or
Yeah.
that kind of inadequacy that sometimes comes with such opportunities?
Yeah, so like I said, I almost at a point, even said like this was not cut off for me. I had a very massive imposter syndrome because I felt like, yeah, I didn't even belong. I'm like, why did I even come here? Looking at the scale of the network, but I would say that like I had very good managers who believed in potential. I mean, they believed in the fact that anybody who went through the interview process and got in had what it took to succeed. And I remember I had that discussion with my manager, and that was the first time I even heard of imposter syndrome because my manager
Wow.
categorically said, "You're a high achiever and you're suffering from imposter syndrome because high achievers suffer from imposter syndrome." And everybody, and that's when he was telling me that he even suffers from imposter syndrome. All our top engineers say he suffers from imposter syndrome every time, even now. Like at the time. So for me, it was being aware of what it was the first step, and I just needed to believe that I could deliver, I could contribute something at that scale. And I think that was how I gradually overcame that syndrome. But
Yeah.
it was a very steep curve.
Okay.
I mean, we're doing automation at scale when back in Ghana, a lot of the networking was the conventional networking. You configure your routers and all that. Now we're talking about adding some software development skills to write some scripts here and there. So
Yeah.
that was also a new skill that had to, because I knew I'd learned a few computer programming in C++ and Java, but then to kind of shift your mindset to be adding that as your normal
Yeah.
skill
Every day. Yeah.
was a steep learning process. But yeah, I was able to adapt. And again, it's all about your curiosity and your grit and the drive to pursue and to push. I believe like you can learn anything. It's just about constant practice and continuous application of yourself.
That's very poignant. And if I look at most of the friends that I have who are either software engineers or in the tech space, the funny thing is that in fact, about 90% of them did not study computer science. And for some time now, there has been a narrowing of the tech competencies within this space that kind of highlights computer science as, let's say, the foundation that one needs. And do you ascribe to this notion that, I mean, computer science, like I said, like you, for example, studied, electrical engineering. The people I know who are very competent and proficient in software engineering either studied mechanical engineering or and so forth. So do you ascribe to the fact that, one needs kind of a computer science foundation to get into the tech space?
I think that the tech space is broad. Now, computer science or coding is one aspect. I mean, software engineering, computer science is like the foundation for software engineering. But it is not really a requirement. Like in this time and age, you can literally learn anything. You don't need a computer science degree to be a software engineer. I mean, there are people I've worked with, like a very exceptional software engineer who studied economics, right? And then
Wow.
himself how to code, and he's really good at it. Like he knows
Economics.
all the moving parts. I know a very exceptional network engineer who studied biochemistry. So it's not about the CS having a CS degree. Once you have the interest in coding or in software engineering or even in networking, you can always apply yourself, and there are so many opportunities for people to develop now. There are so many platforms online where you can learn these skills. You can prepare. You can join developer communities that would support you to make this pivot. So I really don't think it is a hard requirement. And then tech is also broad. When we talk about tech, it's not just about software engineering. There are other roles in tech: program management, product management, network engineering, software engineering, cloud engineering. Now all these things come together to make tech what it is. Even we are talking about self-driving cars, electric cars.
Yeah.
Different skill sets, space exploration. It's all tech, right? There are so many moving parts that come together, and I think the diversity of backgrounds is what makes tech exciting. People with different backgrounds come with different perspectives, and we're able to solve very, very big problems that we face. So I don't think you don't need to limit yourself to computer science to function in tech.
I like the sound of that. It means that people like me, we still have hope. I mean, so yeah, if you're watching this and you are wondering what we're talking about, we are looking at how to build tech talent in Africa, and my guest today is Frank Ribeiro. So I remember, I mean, just to buttress the point you just made, I remember speaking with Dr. 𝗶𝗶𝗰𝗵, and he mentioned that he and his team built this language translation app called the Kaya app. And one of the most critical aspects of that process, of that project, was the non-tech components, right? So they needed really translators, they needed people helping them with archiving and so forth. So, I mean, I think this really goes to support what you have said, that the totality of the tech space is not confined to the hardcore programming and coding. And for those of you watching, it's really never too late if you want to delve into tech and look at the various aspects. And Frank, if I think about tech talents, I always think about, first, how do we nurture? So there's the component of nurturing that has got to do with the educational system and so forth. Then there's the component of creating pipelines, or conduits, right? That has to do with giving the talents that come out of our educational system opportunity to gain experience. And of course, there's that component of moving the tech talent from kind of the local ecosystem to an international ecosystem that comes with exposure. So from your point of view, right, how important is education or the educational system on the continent to adding to the competency of the tech talent? And how do companies like Andela, who create the experience and exposure for the tech talent, how critical is their role on the continent? And do we need more of Andeles on the continent even?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, you like you rightly said. I mean, to build a career, I think there are three components: education, educating yourself, and getting the relevant experience, and then getting the right exposure. Um, so for me, the educational system plays an important part. Now, education can be in the classroom or outside of the classroom. But what the educational system or education does is basically planting the right seeds that would kind of germinate and bear fruits in the field that you want to go into. So education is really important. And I believe that in Africa at this point, we really need to revisit a lot of curriculum, making sure that these skills that are kind of relevant and in tech are introduced earlier in the educational system. And I believe that once those seeds are planted, it's going to stir up curiosity in the youth or in students as they actually grow. Now, when it comes to experience, I mean, there's a lot of I had a lot of experience in Ghana, and I believe places like Andela are offering education. They are kind of training the engineers or the students in the requisite skills and giving them the right experience by offering them, jobs in these large organization, Fortune 500 companies from Africa. So that is important, because for me, that is even increasing the talent capital and the tech capital of the continent. And once we have a large population of people who have that skill, it is naturally going to ripple into other sectors, and we are going to see that transformation in our economies. So for me, institutions like Andela have a very important role to play, and I'll kind of encourage more of such on the continent, because it's going to kind of stir up the tech capital in the continent.
Thank you for that. So if I look at, again, tech talent, for me personally, one of the outputs that I would like to see, let's say, products that have global scale. So if we look at all the technology tools we are making or we are using, all the social media platforms and so forth, they tend to come from the West. So sometimes I get confused. Is it that we don't have enough talent to come up with products that have global scale, or there's not enough capital, or there's not enough talent? So, from your point of view, right, why don't we have products that have global scale, like the Facebooks, like the Zooms and all that? Is it an issue with talent, or is it an issue with capital? Or do you think that we are on track to getting there? I'm really torn between what to think of this scenario.
Yeah, I think historically there was a lot of limited access to information. Internet access was limited across the continent, but we've kind of made a lot of progress over the past 10 years. So I think that paradigm of not seeing some of these applications coming from the continent is really shifting. We have a lot of information now available to people on the internet. We have about 7 unicorns that have built solutions from Africa, which can actually scale globally. And now in the era of cloud computing, it's very easy to kind of build a solution that is scalable everywhere. And I believe we are in the time where that opportunity is there. It's not about talent. I think it was more about infrastructure limitations and access to information, which for me now has really improved, and we will be able to see some of these innovations like we are seeing in these unicorns that came from Africa and have actually built these solutions. I met the founder of a cloud call center solution who built this solution with a small team of 10 people, and currently that solution is being used in 60 countries across the world. Right, that is the power of skill that the cloud provides. And now in this era, we have a lot of, we are having cloud presence on the continent, and developers are able to kind of build their solutions on the cloud. So I think that is shifting, and we'll begin to see a lot of innovations. You can even take, for example, the 𝗂𝗃 app that you referred to earlier on. I mean, that 𝗂𝗃 app did better than Google Translate when it came to tree, and this was built by talent on the continent. So it's not about talent. Talent is everywhere. I believe it's an opportunity that is not, equally distributed, but we are moving into a phase where we have, opportunity being created locally on the continent. So I think that is shifting, and we are on the right path.
Yes, and this is also a shout out to Dr. 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. So as Frank has said, I mean, and for those of you watching, the group of young people in Ghana and across Africa, led by Dr. 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, have built an app. You could check them out. It's called a 𝗂𝗃 app, 𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. And it's an amazing app using NLPs and machine learning to do translations. And like Frank said, their tree translation is better than what Google has produced. So yeah, I kind of ascribe to the fact that yes, the issue is not really with talent. And so if a talent is watching, someone is watching today's stream, for example, and we are really talking about tech talent, and that person, let's say I am that person, I'm currently probably my second year at Legon or KNUST or any of the universities, and I'm studying a non-tech related program, right? Like, what would be a top 3 advice for me or for that person to take that step towards, a pathway into tech, right? So let's say I'm studying it could be agric science, it could be social science, and after watching Frank speak, I'm like, I'm thinking I need to get into tech, or I'm passionate. I've always been passionate about learning C++, but I thought because I didn't study computer science, I can't do it. So like, what would be a top 3 or top 2 advice towards someone like that, for the person to take their first step into tech?
Yeah, I think you need to evaluate and ask yourself, where exactly in tech, which field of tech interests you. And I think once you are able to, frame that up, there are a lot of opportunities, like I said, now to build your skill. Find yourself a mentor. Like I said, I used LinkedIn a lot. Go online. You'll be surprised. You might not be the first person making that shift, right? Go search people with similar backgrounds. You might be surprised that you find people who have done the same thing, and connect with them. You can find mentors locally who are in these fields, who can guide you and help you to acquire the skill. I mean, mentors really will shorten the learning curve for you, because they kind of give you the right things, or information that you need to get to where you want to be in a shorter time. So I would say that find yourself a mentor, and then join a community. I mean, there are so many developer communities around Africa, like in different countries. You have developer communities around. So find a developer community and join. I think that gives you a support system. Because it can be daunting if you're a lone ranger boy.
Yeah,
it's not easy to keep going, right? But if you have a support system in the developer community, that would help. You can join groups. There are Slack groups even now online that can support you to learn a skill, or to develop. I belong to 1 or 2 of such groups in data science, in Python programming, where people are ready to help you even solve some of your problems, right? So I believe there are a lot of opportunities now that you can make that shift. Just find yourself, first identify what you want to do, find yourself a mentor, and then join developer groups, and then use the internet. There's so much, there are so many portals available to upskill or to train yourself in any of these fields. And some of these portals or platforms have these support communities or these developer communities which you can join and upskill.
Yeah, and I'm happy you mentioned mentorship, because that was actually going to be my next line of questioning, because I think the conversations around developing tech talents on the continent, we tend to focus on the raw coding skills in most conversations, and the aspect of gaining some form of exposure at scale, is usually left out. And this is where I personally think that mentorship really it's crucial. And you mentioned one critical point, that having a mentor means that you kind of avoid certain mistakes that you would ordinarily you find yourself in. And so, like, for you personally, like, at what point did you say, look, I need a mentor in this thing that I'm doing? And has your journey always included, let's say, an input from your mentor, or it just happened maybe at some point, maybe after school or after your first job?
Yeah. Initially, I didn't really believe in mentors, right? I was always going online, and I was just a curious person, and I'll try everything, fail at a lot of things, and then I'll know which path to use. But I would say that I started really believing in mentorship when I went to Amazon. They had a mentorship program. So if you wanted to learn any skill, you could just subscribe to the program, and then someone who is skilled in that area could help you. So when I wanted to learn or to develop more in coding, I had a coding mentor. And I remember sometimes you want to write a function, and you are spending so much time writing this function, and then your mentor tells you don't need to do this. There's a library that does this for you, and there's a module that does this for you, which you didn't know. So that really helps you in the transition. Like now I'm kind of exploring like data science, and it's the same thing, right? There are so many things that you might start quickly. Yeah, it's good you learn from your mistakes, and that is also very important. I mean, when you learn by doing and by making mistakes, it's also very important. And your mentors are just there to share their views and their experiences. They might not have all the answers, or might not have everything that you are going through, but it's just an element that is also very important. And for me, shortening that learning curve is very essential when you have mentors.
Awesome stuff. So for those of you watching, we have opened the opportunity. If you want to either write us a comment or you have a question for my guest, please feel free to do so. And as we continue the conversation. So Frank, do we stand a chance as a continent when it comes to the kind of talent that, let me put it this way, the kind of approach we are using currently? Do you think that we stand a chance in the global scheme of things? So, like, can a software engineer, or probably, as you've explained to us, even a hardware engineer, really at the competency level and skill level stand at par with someone who was trained, for example, at MIT? Like, do we stand a chance? The reason I'm asking this is that you mentioned that the internet creates a level playing field. So irrespective of your geographical location, it means that you have the opportunity at a global scale, but at the same time, you are competing at a global scale, right? So, like, just like your thoughts, do you think that a software engineer from Ghana or from Gambia or from Rwanda really can stand at par with someone who is from Europe, for example? Any thoughts? Yeah. Just random thoughts.
Most definitely. I like I said, the internet access has leveled the playing field. You have access to the same tools, the same information that anyone anywhere who is learning the same thing has at their disposal. The differentiator here is actually soiling your hands and working on projects, right? There are so many open source projects around that you can contribute to. So I don't think there's there's that situation where you might say that people, because talent is everywhere. There are people, I remember in my time during Huawei, there are people who literally solve problems from Ghana that have not been solved anywhere, right?
Wow.
So it's not about people, it's about access to the right information. And I believe that with where we are moving into, where we are having increased internet access, internet penetration is growing. This opportunity is just endless. The youthful population we are talking about, under 20 or to average age of 20 years, have access to so much information that we didn't have, right, at that time. So
Yeah.
the outcomes for me are going to be different. And I believe that we would have people, I mean, like example, we spoke about the Kaya app, right?
Yeah.
The people who built that are from the continent. So I don't think the internet literally levels the playing field and gives equal opportunity for you to stand out wherever you are.
Thank you for that, Frank. So for those of you watching, we just having a conversation around tech talent in Africa, and my guest Frank Ribeiro is sharing his thoughts on what we can do and what are some of the constraints and as well as the opportunities for tech talent. So I think this is for me crucial. We are going to go to the comments now, and we'll just pick up one or two comments and questions. So again, please, if you have any questions, please feel free to send your questions through, and it could also be comments, so not necessarily questions. If you have comments, you want to contribute to the discussion, please feel free to do so. We have a couple of comments from comments. So Harry, you can see on your screen, Harry says, Frank is awesome. Happy to have met him. So it looks like you have a fan base. It looks like you have a fan base somewhere. So we have, okay, Asha Wilson also says good content. This is some good feedback as well. Maxwell says powerful one there. And so we also have, this one is like really pressure, Frank the Shark. So I'm not sure. It's like your fan base is really so I think that these are people you may also know. And we have Jan also saying way to go, Frank. And there's one from, I think, 𝗗𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. He says that, do you have any plans to mentor Ghanaians who are interested in tech community, or do you have any passion project you want to undertake? I think that's what you want to see. You want to undertake in Ghana and Africa as a whole to help build the tech community. I'm sure we did. I'm laughing because we talked about this morning. So
Yeah,
Frank and I talked about it. So Frank, this over to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think myself and a couple of friends from the continent actually started a mentorship program. I mean, this January, where we had a few students, coming in. We're kind of piloting it to see how it's going to go. Students who were newly graduated, students who were interested in learning about the cloud and DevOps, and basically giving them the opportunity to upskill in that area. So that is something that is ongoing, and myself and some of my peers are really open to provide that. We will formalize this and have a program launched to have people on board and provide the needed mentorship. We are happy to support, we are happy to help. And with respect to projects, I'm currently working with, there's some startups that and some problems or solutions that we are kind of developing to solve some of the problems on the continent. So for me, this is something that is ongoing. Very passionate about Africa. Africa is home. So
exactly.
We are always connected.
Exactly. Frank, it's interesting that 𝗗𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 asked this question, because just this morning, Frank and I were talking about the deficits that we see in the current tech ecosystem, where there are people with the education. So you remember Frank mentioned the 3 E's, and I learned this from him actually. He talked about education, he talked about experience, and he talked about exposure. So between education and experience, there's a gap. And between experience and exposure, there's also a gap. So Frank actually, like he mentioned, is undertaking or coming up with a project, and I'm sure he would soon announce it. And when it's ready, would make it really available. But he and his team and his friends, myself included, we are building a program like that to fill in those gaps for the immense talent on the continent. So thank you, 𝗗𝗲𝗃𝗶𝗴. This is a very relevant question. There's another one from Joshua Mauto. So Joshua says, hello, I'm Joshua, final year engineering student. Mine is not a question though, but then I'm seeking an opportunity to do my national service in a data or software or telecom company. Okay, so I'm guessing he's asking if we have any opportunities like that for a national service person, or if Frank, you have any slot for national service person.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joshua can reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. I think there are some companies that are, and Prince, we spoke about this, right? That are offering this opportunity for young graduates to basically get the experience to kind of start their careers. So yeah, there's opportunities available. So Joshua, you can reach out to Prince or myself, and then we can see what we can do from there.
Exactly. So Joshua, I think, I mean, it's very good. There's a philosophy of shooting your shot. So I think it's quite timely, because just this morning, Frank and I were talking about these things. So Joshua, please send either myself or Frank a message on LinkedIn, and then we can pick the conversation from there. So if you're still watching, we have just 5 minutes left, I guess. And if you have any questions, Joshua says, thank you, Dr. Frank. He's not yet a doctor, so but yeah, I get what you mean. Maybe I put it on the screen just for you to see. I'm not making this up. You are being given a PhD. But yeah, thank you for that, Joshua. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments or inputs, please, we have about 4 minutes left now to wrap up this session. My final question before we wrap up would be in terms of the how important, right? Because when you talk about talent, it's the conversation again kind of goes in the line of individual brilliance, right? But how important is teamwork, right, within the tech space? Is it just individual brilliance, or shark, as someone mentioned, maybe a shark? So, but like, how important is, like, for the talent watching this, like, it's true that individual brilliance is important, but how important is teamwork, learning to work with other people, towards building a very formidable career?
Yeah, so starting my career, I remember very well that I was, labeled as like, a jack of all trades, because I was literally learning everybody's job, right? And I remember my manager telling me at a point, like, any one time I talk to people going on leave and I ask them who are they going to hand over their work to, they say, Frank. Like, why? What's happening? Are you jack of all trades, master of none? So, initially when I started, that was it. But I've come to appreciate, like, teamwork is vital for innovation. You cannot work solo, and you cannot know everything. Working in a team, you are able to, it's not just about individual brilliance. There's a lot that comes out of working in a team, right? You are able to have diverse perspectives of a problem, which you might not know if you're working alone, right? So teamwork for me is very important. That's why I'm saying that even in developing yourself in engineering, if you want to learn a skill, be part of a community, and that community setting is kind of providing you with that support system, and then have that diversity of thoughts to actually excel at it. So teamwork is vital. It's not just about individual brilliance, There are teams that, we've seen, if you watch football, right, you can see that
Yeah.
sometimes some teams win a tournament and it's not about individual players. Some teams will have all the superstars and other teams will just work very, very cohesively as a team, and they would actually defeat the team with the superstars or with the exceptional talent, right? So teamwork for me is very key in operating efficiently, right? So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you for that, Frank. So you've kind of left a very important remark in our conversation where you said that we have the talent in Africa. So for the corporate organizations and companies watching us, and it's not just because Frank has said it, but I have experienced it myself being in this space for some time, that there's talent in Africa. And if you're seeking to employ people within the tech space, right, either software engineers or program managers or product managers, there is incredible talent on the continent. So just give the people or the talent from Africa a chance. We may not have the totality of the exposure, that is the third E that Frank spoke about, but we have the education and we have the experience and we have the drive to really make things happen. So for the companies watching, I think this is crucial, that give the talents from Africa an opportunity or a chance to prove themselves. And I think that, you'll be surprised in most cases. Oh, Frank, what do you think?
Most definitely.
Yeah. So we are wrapping up. We have 1 minute to go. What would be your final words to our viewers today? In relation to everything we've spoken about, is there anything you'd want to leave with the audience by way of a message?
So I would say that we are really living in exciting times, where the frontiers of technology are being broken. We are talking about Internet of Things, AI, self-driving cars, space exploration. And for me, this presents a very great opportunity for the youngest continent. We're talking about average age of under 20, which is just amazing, to play a very key role in driving these innovations around the world. So I think we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to future generations to position ourselves to take advantage of these opportunities. And I believe with this, we can actually make Africa a powerhouse of technology.
Thank you very much, Frank. And I think we can wrap up for today's episode of People Who Inspire. And if you want to interact with us, myself or Frank, please feel free to reach out to us on social media, especially LinkedIn. It works quite well for us. And if you want to have the opportunity to listen to more of such stories, please do well to make a date with me every week where I bring you another episode of PWI. So next week, God willing, would have the next guest. And I want to say a big thank you to Frank. Frank, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate making time and speaking with us.
Yeah, thank you. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you to all of you who tuned in today. I'm really thankful. Without you, today's episode would not have been a success. So I wish you the very best of the weekend, and I would say bye-bye for now. See you next week.